here. May I commence at 20 francs? Oh, come, ladies and gentlemen, 15 and 15, I beg, thank you. Yes, 20 from you, sir. 25 on my left. Thank you, madam, 30. Selling for 30 francs then, 30 once. 30 twice. Sold for 30 francs to the Vicomte de Chagny. Thank you once again, sir. Boy.
Collector's piece. Indeed. 52. Exactly as she said. She often spoke of you, my friend. Your velvet line and your figurine of me. Will you still play when all the rest of us are dead?
Christine never acknowledges that music box.
This is so weird. What is he talking
Why
about?
would she talk about that music
What's
box?
up with the monkey anyway?
Isn't the monkey in the masquerade too? Let's start from the beginning if we can. I can't find much in the way of origins of concept for the musical box that features so prominently on the stage, but there are a total of 4 lines sung about it, which is the most acknowledgement any props in the story receive. By comparison, the chandelier is only mentioned briefly once inside a song, and it is the most iconic prop on a stage probably ever. The monkey is directly interacted with twice, once at the very beginning and at the very end, and accompanies our characters throughout. The cheerful melody is echoed inside the musical compositions. Our little friend evokes some very deep emotional responses from all 3 of our characters, and each of them has a separate moment with it, and punctuates the most iconic scenes in the production. I believe it is given such a cherished space inside the production as a tribute to the colorful past of the opera ghost, which really couldn't be given adequate time on stage, including the fan-favorite character, the Persian, named Daroga, whose character in the novel was absorbed in the musical's Madame Giry. And at the same time the monkey musical box is introduced to us at the auction, though we are unaware of it at the time, she is as well. Its cheerful melody is the first music we hear inside the story, and it's almost the last as well, as perfect bookends to the tragedy. So to understand the musical box's significance, we have to take a look at his lair and the items inside of it. His organ is on the right, where, not unlike the original story, he has been writing the 12-tone opera Don Juan Triumphant, which in the book is described as music that burns, music that affects the soul, and has taken him decades to perfect. This is his magnum opus, the story he has molded to suit his purposes, to reflect and rewrite his own life. Seated at his organ, he can admire and meditate upon the object of his desire, which is on the left of the stage, covered until he reveals it, the mirror bride. A lifeless model of Christine in a wedding gown and veil, situated in the frame of a broken mirror. When faced with the flesh and blood Christine, it collapses strangely. The scene fades to black when Christine faints at the sight. The phantom carries her to the boat to recover. The boat with pillows on it may indeed serve not only as Christine's makeshift bed until she finally wakes, but his own as well. An interesting little note here is that the boat itself is pretty clearly coffin-shaped, which might be an intentional nod to the original opera ghost who slept in a coffin. When the lights return, the mannequin leans against the inside of the frame. A few other things have changed in the room as well. In addition to a costume change from Phantom, he bangs away at his thundering composition on the organ, the rewritten story of him, echoing his words to Christine just moments before. Finally, our little primate friend makes its first appearance to Christine. Presumably placed there deliberately by the Phantom, it seems to take on a life of its own after his crashing organ piece, but Christine actually awakens, not to the fantasy of Don Juan, but to the tinkling tune of Masquerade, the lyrics of which we know are true to the core of the Phantom's story, as if our friend is trying to correct the record. As the monkey is right next to her, she obviously sees it after its melody accompanies her consciousness. It's only a few seconds later, while he is writing his magnum opus, that Christine removes his mask and sends him into an emotional spiral. Now, they're both faced with the ugly truth of him as a tortured human being, not the otherworldly, untouchable ghost of the theater, and certainly not a triumphant Don Juan. On his knees, huddled like a child, Christine knows the remedy when faced with such trauma: compassion and mercy. Directly after the first act comes to a close, the melody ushers in a strange choreography on the massive staircase before us. So firstly, the music isn't the chiming music box sound that we know. In fact, it's done with what a barrel organ really sounds like, mentioned during the auction as to what the monkey sits upon. Barrel organs are a French instrument invented in 1820, with a series of bellows powered by a hand crank that would activate pipes to create a melody, which was provided by whole stamped rolls of paper. Here, I'm going to diverge just a bit to talk about what kind of incredible stage magic is happening, and the levels of collaboration on the creative team to bring this moment to fruition. The artificial and mechanical movements on stage are a choreographic decision by Gillian Lynn to help the suggestion of a massive cast on the staircase. Theater magic not only merged the actors with the dynamically posed dummies along the railings, but perhaps to demonstrate through dance what the lyrics echo: the fantastical world of illusion, anonymity, facade, and the dehumanization of persona. What these partygoers dabble in to their delight as a celebration is the unfortunate reality of the man called a monster beneath the floors they dance upon. What they call a beastly costume, he sees in the mirror as his reality. The falseness of the crowd is shattered by his appearance later on, of course, in spectacular fashion, but perhaps more about that another time. Leading the charge to this wonderful artificial dance scene as it opens is our monkey, ironically not tethered to a metal mechanical gearbox, but freed to dance among the partygoers. Painted with a wide grin, and with functioning tiny cymbals to accentuate the crescendos appropriately, the dancer weaves between dancing pairs, never taking a partner, but instead catches the attention of Christine, who seems confused and a bit unnerved by the monkey's appearance, obviously recognizing its curious design. The dancer appears to take the part of the monkey so well, not blending in with the ballroom style of dance and appearing and disappearing around the staircase at will, we could be convinced that perhaps it is yet another magic trick from our opera ghost. Nonetheless, if she feels she's dreaming, the monkey takes her mask from her and it is not returned. How appropriate that the only one involuntarily laid bare in this sea of mimicry and illusion is Christine this time. The monkey forces her to confront herself, maskless and vulnerable, and to face everyone else in the same manner. It's only from here, facing the truth, that our female protagonist can redeem the story. At the end of our tale, its final appearance is the most poignant. Now in his lair again, the Mirror Bride has been replaced by a throne. The Phantom has obtained his bride, and there is nothing left to do but to reign over his music and over the world that hated him for so long. Ironically, this kingdom is not actually over the world, but under the world. The monkey is found in his lair again, at the foot of his throne, which means he must descend the stairs of egotism and kingship to interact with it, and maybe even kneel to appreciate it. Christine finds this opportunity accidentally when she begs for Raoul's life. She is met with the malice of his broken heart and falls at his feet before the throne. Not inches away from her is the music box, the companion who preceded her violation of his fantastical persona, her insensitive curiosity, which had been horribly cruel, but was in fact the correct identification of the obstacle between their hearts, ever truly growing more than an idolizing obsession or doe-eyed wonderment for the other. Vulnerable and honest in a sea of masks, the monkey brought that same lesson to her. Vulnerable before the world in truth, and willingly laid bare the only way love can ever hope to grow. Forced upon both of them at separate times, revealed the terror of what truth could reveal to another human being in a world of mockery and illusion. Now together, unapologetic, with nowhere to hide, the resolution presents itself. While hatred, fear, and confusion wells up inside Christine, in a moment of silence before the monkey, meditating upon the hurt she'd caused him and the pain the world at large had as well, the answer to his cruelty would stop the hemorrhaging for both of them.
What kind of life have you known? God, give me courage to show you you are not
If we look at the details, we can infer what could have been a massive topic of conversation between the new couple of Raoul and Christine, starting with the moment she realized that compassion was the only way to set not only Raoul free from certain death, but her faithful guardian from a life of pain and suffering, and also herself from a life of masks and underground kingdoms. And acknowledging, perhaps, her deeper connection in a spiritual way with the opera ghost than she could even fully comprehend. This mystery, shrouded as a man, could no longer threaten or terrify her. She'd faced her own reality and been confronted with what the world and everyone she'd ever met expected of and from her, without parents or an identity of her own. Though the Phantom had been by her side through all of it, seeing her talents, personality, and beauty grow through the years, and cultivating it, she realized she'd been there for him as well. He too was mourning the loss of his companion. As an orphan with no parental direction, how could she navigate the social minefield of a ballet troupe and not inevitably find herself at the furthest fringes of decent society, a forgotten and unwanted girl, the prey of wealthy patrons frequenting backstage doorways? The young girl would need a watchful guardian.
So lost, so helpless, yearning for my guidance.
Ironically enough, it would be in a dressing room doorway that Raoul would visit her, uninvited, and it was only through her teacher, who grew her voice and raised her in the shadows of the opera house, navigating her through the grand and mundane trials of life, that Raoul would ever have the privilege of recognizing her on the stage at all. This deep connection between them is not something that Raoul could rightfully claim with Christine. Although his words on the rooftop yearn for what the teacher and his student have together, when given the opportunities to demonstrate his willingness to be her guardian, it's clear he really can't pull through. In a literal sense, the darkness and struggle of the childhood Christine knew as an orphan could recognize the depths of the sorrow her teacher concealed from the world. Raoul could not claim a history as rich with reflection and could never truly know what it meant that Christine yearned for. While he could reminisce the fun, sunny days of childhood, he could not recognize the value of tragedy and shuns what it could foster inside the human heart. Given his uninvited appearance at her dressing room door, his childish reminiscing, and recognition of her only after her first career success, the Phantom's thundering insults and outrage seem entirely more reasonable. Rose's some wine and chit-chat was more than insulting to what her guardian knew was entirely beneath her. Christine was already miles ahead in navigating the darker waters of life, and came out the other side, no doubt thanks entirely to the tutelage of her guide, who not only provided her with the tools to lift her soul from despair in the same way he did for himself through music and song, but also simply to have a guide through coming of age. It was at that moment he realized she could handle the darkness he'd come to know as his life. He finished on one. Christine, his Galatea, leaves him, and with no other reason to venture to the surface again, his boat is rendered obsolete. Left with nothing except the flickering candles, clutching the veil of the bride known only to him in his dreams, the monkey plays its tune like a faithful friend's laughter.
Masquerade. Great faces on parade. Masquerade. Hide your face so the world will never find.
Curled up to it at the foot of his throne, like a child, laid bare without a mask, he is struck with a childlike adoration of her. Not clawing to cover himself, or mourning the loss of the false image he'd shown to the world his entire life, he can stand before her, no longer as a monster, grabbing at her or spitting venom. Exposed and defenseless, our monster's heart is laid bare. Christine hesitates for a moment. Though she'd made up her mind before this moment, she still returns, hoping to behold the human she set free. Met with him, finally face to face. Perhaps, if this had been his way all along, in truth instead of a web of illusion, Christine would have spent her days with him. I like to think that Raoul finally listened to Christine's story once they began their lives together, and her emphasis on the impression the strange music box had with its curious smile and cheerful tune in the dark underground lair held the secret of the ghost and his love that an aged Raoul forever ponders, unable to truly comprehend it.